Okay, good morning, people. Let's see who's here. Eliana's here. Good morning, Eliana. Lim is here. Good morning. Good evening, Ella. I know it's morning for me, but not so much for you. Good morning, Carmen. Oh, hi. There's a cat here. Good morning, Carmen. Good morning, Jenna. Good morning, Mashid again. Good morning, Michael. Who else is here? Cindy. Good morning, Cindy. Adalbert's here. Good morning, Adalbert. Lily's here. Good morning, Lily. Good morning, KC again. Good morning, Karen again. And good morning, Thika again. And Chiffon's here too. Good morning to you. Min is here. Good morning. Yeah, okay, good. How many people do we have here so far? 11. Okay. I guess that'll be a good start. So what we'll do today is we'll continue with India. We'll just review what we were talking about last week in terms of the arrival of those Indo-Aryans or Aryans or Vedic Aryans or Vedic people. They seem to be called a bunch of different things. We'll talk about how that sort of led to some changes in northern India, and then how that sort of forms the basis for some important parts of Indian culture going forward. But we also, good morning, Ying. We also said that this was a very basic, simplified version of what happens in India, because India is a big place with a lot of people and a lot of different cultures and traditions. And so we're really just, again, scratching the surface of what India is and how it develops. But you know, it's a short course, and that's all the time we have. So we'll do a little bit of a review. I have something for you to read on social stratification and the caste system in India, which is based on the Varna system, which we'll talk about. And then I have some more video for you to watch. So that's what we'll do. And then I think tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about the micro paper, and I'll try to get some grades back to you. If not tomorrow, then definitely Wednesday for that. But I'm going to try for tomorrow, okay? So hey, Sabrina. So without further ado, nope, that's not right. Hang on. One second. I forgot to drag the new presentation on here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so last week we were talking about the Vedic Age, and so of course the Indus River civilization that we talked about at the very beginning had sort of collapsed. People had left the big cities and moved off to the south and to the east, and that seems to have made some room for some foreigners to come in from Central Asia. And so these Indo-Aryans, that we called them, migrated into kind of northwestern India in what's now Punjab, and that had some pretty significant effects on India itself. And so we kind of had this mixing of two cultures, the people who were living in India to begin with, and these Indo-Aryans who arrived from Central Asia. We said that we didn't have a lot in the way of archaeological evidence for these people, but we do know about them from their hymns, because their religious prayers were passed down word for word, generation to generation, right? So we knew a few things about them in terms of their subsistence strategy. So they were pastoralists, they herded cows. We said that they did a little bit of farming from time to time, because there's prayers asking people for a good harvest. We saw that they lived in sort of extended families with fathers at the head of the family, and that there was a little bit of inequality between men and women, but maybe not so much as would happen a bit later on. And of course, because these were religious hymns, these Vedas, it told us a little bit about their religious or spiritual life as well. And so we knew that these Indo-Aryans had multiple gods. We know that Indra was kind of the most prominent god, the god of rain or the god of storms, and people would ask Indra for various blessings to help them out in their lives. And we also know where these people came from because of their language. And so in the video we watched, we saw that William Jones, who I believe is a British linguist or philologer, as they sometimes are called, he compared Sanskrit words to other words or to words in other languages and found a number of pretty important similarities. And so that led Jones and others to imagine that there was this original group. Hello, Jenny. There was this original group of people who were living in Central Asia here, and they kind of migrated out from that area and moved into other places. And so as their original language began to change and evolve, all of these other languages would eventually come from it. And so here you can see there are large branches of this family tree, like Sanskrit, which are related to Iranian languages and Slavic languages and Baltic languages. And so there are connections between these languages because they share a common ancestor language. We said that the Vedas told us that the Aryans were, they called themselves Aryan because it meant civilized people. And we have some idea of the path they took into India because their hymns mention rivers and valleys that they crossed and settled in. So these Vedas are very important for our knowledge of the Vedic people because it tells us about their religion, their family structure, what they value, and even the way in which they came into this area. So the Vedas are an important source of information for these people because we don't know much about them archaeologically. I asked you to read this section of the text here, and some of it was stuff that we've already covered. It described the fact that these people came into India around 1700 BCE, kind of on this general path. And these people moved into kind of the northern part of India and started to herd their animals and sort of farm in this area. We said that as more people arrived, they started to sort of settle down. They started to farm more often, or they started to do more farming, I guess we could say. They started to specialize in various occupations, which we said was an important part of creating civilizations. We read that their agriculture was made more productive by iron tools, which they invented, and the fact that they domesticated rice, and that allowed them to grow, that allowed them to get more calories from the land. And again, as all of these things happened, populations started to grow, and we see a bit of urbanization. We see people starting to live in villages in this period as well. In terms of governing themselves, we said that there were a lot of different systems that were in place. We had some larger kind of military chiefs, if you will, called rajas, who were in control of a collection of clans, and clans were often headed by a chief. And so some of these clan heads, hey Caleb, some of these heads of clans and rajas work together in sort of a vaguely democratic way. And so these are called oligarchies by some. In other situations, we had clan chiefs that sort of became kings, and so they used the priests to help them demonstrate to the population that they had religious favor, and so they kind of made themselves into a line of kings and ruled that way. So there were a few different forms of political organization going on here in the Vedic Age of northern India. The other important thing that comes out of this period is we said that there was an evolving social structure called the Varna System. And so earlier on, when the Aryans first arrived in India, they basically had a three-class social structure. So people were either priests or warriors or just kind of common common people who herded or farmed. But during the Vedic Age, we saw a more complicated social organization system appear called the Varna System. And we said there were four Varnas. There were four categories of people that you could belong to. And so the Brahmins were the priests, and so their job was to memorize the Vedas and transmit them orally, and to pray, right? To maintain good relations with the gods for people. There were Kshatriyas, who were the heads. Kshatriyas, who were the head of clans and the head of groups of clans, but they were also warriors, and so when it came time to fight, the Kshatriyas would be the ones who fought. Vaishyas were kind of common people, I guess, simple traders and farmers. And then there were Shudras, and these were people who were kind of at the bottom of society. They did basic tasks and were servants. And so this Varna system is important because it will serve as the basis for the caste system that comes later in India, and that caste system still has power and influence today. These Varnas were also important because they were hereditary, and so you didn't get to choose which Varna you belonged to. You weren't able to, make more money and then earn your way into a different one. You were kind of born into one, and that was who you were for the rest of your life. And so the Varna that you belonged to determined what kind of job you had in life, whether you were a warrior or a farmer or a servant. It determined what sort of rituals you could take part in, what sort of religious rituals you could take part in. And of course, it determined who you would marry as well, because you had to marry within your Varna. And so families would be part of a Varna, and then they would kind of remain in there forever, because there was no way out. There was no way to sort of move up in society. So, that said, here's what I would like you to do for, I think we just need 10 or 15 minutes for this. It's not very long. I have a short article for you to read in Microsoft Teams. It's called Social Stratification. And then there are 3 questions at the end of it that I would like you to answer. So what I'll do is I'm going to turn you loose for about 15 minutes. Read that article. Again, it's in the files section of Microsoft Teams, or it's on Student Portal if you like. Read the article. It's very short. Answer the questions that are at the end. And then we'll be back in 15 minutes and we'll talk about the answers, okay? Okay, let's do it. See you in 15 minutes. Okay, and we're back. So just a short read on social stratification, which of course the article mentions that all societies have, right? All societies have ways of layering people. That's what a strata is. It's a layer, and so there's people at the top of most societies, and then there's people in the middle, and then there's people at the bottom, right? So you read that article, and I asked you to think about how do we, in our societies today, how do we categorize people? So how do we sort people in the social order in terms of who has more power or resources or opportunities or status and respect? How do we sort people? So Cindy here says the structures arises from inequality of status among persons. That is true. Yeah, so the degree of inequality structures where you sit. Okay, Bashid says an open class system is a stratification which facilitates social mobility. That's an important thing too. So social mobility is your ability to move up or down in the social hierarchy, right? And so societies that have sort of an open social system allow you to move up. You can work your way up, or you can work your way down if you're not careful. Closed systems is where you are in a certain level of society, and that's where you stay. There's no way to move up, and sometimes there's no way to move down either. So Lim says the degree of social inequality. Okay, that's true. Here's what I was looking for. Good. So we categorize people based on occupation, right? So some occupations have higher status, right? We look up to people who are maybe celebrities or doctors or lawyers or Elon Musk or something like that. We look up to people in those occupations, and then some occupations don't have as much status, right? We don't respect people as much if they are if they have a certain occupation. Cindy also says income, right? So often in society we look up to, or we give more power to people who have money, but people who have more money also have more power because they can do things, right? They have opportunities. They can use the legal system better. So people who work in certain occupations have status and power. People who have lots of money have status and power. So they derive power from those things. Religion can be part of it as well, right? So depending on the country you live in and the political situation, some religions may be higher in the social structure than others, right? If you have social class in your society, and sort of depending on what that means, that can be a way to kind of organize people as well. And so I think they mentioned in the article that in Western countries, we kind of imagine that we have an upper class and a middle class and a lower class. The edges of those distinctions are kind of fuzzy. It's not really sure. It's not clear where the line between low class and middle class is. Most of it's based on income, though. And so the more money you have, you can belong to a higher social class. And in the West, you can usually move between them, at least in theory. Race and gender are part of this as well, right? So those can place you in the social hierarchy in one spot or another. Sometimes those distinctions are very, very clear, and sometimes they're a little more fuzzy. But you're very right, Karen. Those are part of it as well. Kinship or caste, right? So depending on the society you belong to, the family that you're a part of can put you in a higher or lower status position. And of course, if you belong to a certain caste, that can put you in a higher or lower category as well. Properties and wealth and social status, all of those can place us in a different part of that's okay, Pearly. In a different part of the social hierarchy. Um, yeah, and so some of the things that we're talking about here, not all of them, but some of the things we're talking about are ascribed statuses. And ascribed comes from scribe, comes from written, and ascribed status is something that is just given to you. Okay, and so you don't have to do anything, you don't earn it, you simply have it because of who you are. And so that can have to do with your gender or your race, can have to do with the family you belong to. In the caste system, caste systems are ascribed, right? You're born into a certain caste, and that's just who you are, right? And that's in contrast to achieved status. That's a status that you earn. So if you're an Olympic gold medalist, that's an achieved status because you've had to achieve that gold medal in order to have it. Okay, that looks pretty good so far. I think I probably answered that just a second ago, but I'd be interested to see what you said for that one as well. So what categories what categorizations are ascribed and which ones are achieved? So Cindy says here, based on family background, ethnicity, gender, religion, which is ascribed. Yeah, all of those are ascribed status. You could say that religion is not really either, because you can choose to belong to a religion, but often we're born into a religion and we're instructed in it, right? So I think that's good there, Cindy. Ascribed is any status that's based on your family background. Yep, ethnicity, gender, or religion. Good. Ascribed is caste or kinship. Yeah, that's true too. Achieved is wealth. Yep. Property and social status. In some cases, yes. Any status based on family background. Okay, so that's the ascribed one. And Mashid says ascribed status is any status based on family background. Yep. Yeah, and so yeah, ascribed status is something that you just have. Achieved is something that you earn. And so, achieved statuses are President of the United States, Olympic gold medal winner, Nobel Prize winner, college graduate, high school graduate. All of those are achieved statuses because you achieve them, right? But again, your family, your kinship, your caste, your tribe, your gender, your race, all of those things are ascribed statuses. They're just given to you, and you don't and you don't have to do anything to get them. Okay. And the last thing I asked you was this one here. I said, the article said that caste is still is still a part of the way that India works today, even though there are laws preventing discrimination against people in different castes. It's still, depending on where you are in India, it still has influence on the way people interact with each other and the way other people are treated. And so I said, can you think of similar situations in other countries where historical values and prejudices continue to impact modern people? And so Cindy says here, yeah, caste is still a reality in India. Very true, because it's a result of developments during the Mughal era and the British Raj, or the British colonial period. Yeah, so those caste differences that existed in the past were kind of they became legal statuses, particularly as part of the British colonial period. And that's not the only instance in which a traditional social structure has been made into a legal social structure by colonial powers, and then bad things happen later. So that definitely happens in India. Cindy, you're right. Because of the results of the development during the okay, that's good. That's good. And Karen says, yeah, laws don't end discrimination, right? Because discrimination is based on people's prejudicial ideas, and that's up here, and a law doesn't make that go away, right? It takes longer to get rid of those prejudices. And Karen says, most countries in the world have a form of prejudice towards or a group of people. Yeah. There are social prejudices and discrimination that go on in every society. And again, you can and you should pass laws against that discrimination, but that doesn't end it, right? More has to happen. Northern Ireland. Yeah, those were historical prejudices. There were nationalistic issues, mostly nationalistic issues. They were there was a religious element as well, but I think it was a political conflict more than anything. But yeah, those were historical issues that took decades to work out, right? And a lot of people died as a result. I was thinking about the United States for this one, where historical prejudices against numerous peoples of color, but particularly Black Americans, is still a reality for modern people, and we're seeing that in the news. We just talked about Indigenous people. There are historical values and prejudices still play a role in how Indigenous people experience Canada today. Yeah, those are the two that jumped into my head. But there's certainly more. But India's kind of traditional social structure still plays a role in how people interact today, and that part of it is not unique to India either, right? So all countries have kind of historical baggage that continues to inform how people live their lives, in the modern world. Okay, so that's really good. That's red. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about briefly is the beginnings of Hinduism. Okay, so with this Rig Veda that comes to us from the Aryans. Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background here. With that Rig Veda comes sort of the basis of Hinduism, and so Hinduism is something that it's kind of a religious tradition that will evolve over hundreds of years, and it will sort of become more complex and gain more layers as it develops. The earliest kind of layer to Hinduism is called Brahmanism. And like I mentioned, it begins with the Rig Veda, where the Rig Veda kind of outlines what the universe looks like and who some of the major gods are. A little bit later during the Vedic Age, there are more hymns and books added to the Rig Veda. So we have the Brahmanas and the Upanishads. Both of these are collections of writings that are added to the original Vedas, and again serve as kind of the basis for Hinduism. And so the Brahmanas are basically they're kind of like a manual, like an instruction manual for how to do these rituals for the Brahmins. Okay, so all of the sacrifices that you need to make, prayers that you need to say, those are outlined in the Brahmanas. The Upanishads are different. They are records about the teachings and the thinkings of spiritual leaders who were kind of wandering around India looking for, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say enlightenment, but I don't want to say that yet. They were, as you can see here, they're not satisfied with Brahmanism, with the things that the Brahmins are teaching, and so they're looking for more clarity. They're looking for a better understanding of how the universe works and how people work, how individuals work. So you can see they're looking for deeper insight into the nature of the reality, or nature of reality, and the origins of the universe and of the human condition. And so what some of these thinkers come up with are these four concepts here: Brahman, Atman, transmigration, and karma. Okay, and how this works, how these thinkers in the Upanishads think is this. So what they feel is that humans face a predicament. So us humans have a problem. They believe that the universe is repeatedly created and destroyed over and over again, and humans kind of wander through this universe in an endless succession of deaths and rebirths. Okay, so they believe that humans are reincarnated, right? And so you die, and as you die, your spirit is reborn into something else. Okay, this process of sort of death and rebirth and reincarnation is called transmigration, and it is determined by karma. And so karma is the act of good deeds bringing about a better rebirth, so you'll be reborn as a better thing next time. But if you act badly, then reincarnation. If you act badly, then you will be born as a worse thing next time. And so there's an incentive for people to behave well in this life, because it will affect how you are reborn next time, right after you die. So that's kind of what the Upanishads are talking about. They're talking about the way in which the universe works. We have this cycle of reincarnation, of transmigration, and karma determines what your next birth will be, right? But what these thinkers were thinking about is, how do we get out of this constant cycle of death and rebirth? How do we achieve something greater? And so these sages talk about the idea that there is one divine reality below the universe. Okay, the whole universe is one reality, and so this was called Brahman. They also felt that deep in the heart of each person lies your eternal soul, Atman. And so if you were able to quiet your mind enough, and if you were able to reflect and meditate long enough, you can discover that Atman, your soul, the deepest part of who you are, is Brahman. It's one with the universe. And so the basic idea here is that your personal self, I think this is it anyway, your personal self is kind of an illusion, because you are just a manifestation of the greater universe. And so the realization of this is how people become liberated from this illusion of endless wandering. And so you are not separate from the rest of the universe, you are part of it. At least I think so. I'm no expert on Hinduism. And so during this Vedic age, this is these are some of the major things that come out of this period. Okay, so these Aryans arrived. Brahmanism appears as kind of a religion, as kind of a very basic or introductory form of Hinduism. Again, we see the written use of Sanskrit, and we see the Varna social system appear out of this period as well. And all of these will be important foundations for the Indian civilization that will appear out of it. The only other thing I'll mention here very quickly, because they mentioned it in the video that you, or one of the short videos that you watched on Friday, was the Mahabharata. Sorry, yikes. It was mentioned in the video, and this is an epic poem. Okay, and so it's a very early work of literature, kind of like Homer's Iliad or Odyssey, if you know anything about ancient Greece, although this one is quite significantly longer. And again, it tells the story of this major battle, and as the story gets told over and over again, and as it grows, it kind of becomes a foundation myth for India. And so again, here we see the power of story, right? We see people taking their experiences and their values and their beliefs and putting it into story, and those stories help them to transmit those to the next generation, those beliefs and values, but also to understand themselves and who they are in that story. And so the Indians are doing it here just the same as the Mesopotamians were doing with Gilgamesh, right? Except this is a much longer story than Gilgamesh. Okay, so let me back up here. At that point, I would like us to take a little break, okay? So take a 10-minute break, come back here, and when we get back, we will talk about Buddhism, okay? So take a break, come back, Buddhism in 10 minutes. Okay, people, and we're back. So, what we just talked about a minute ago was that this sort of Vedic period in India becomes it's a very important historical and cultural period for the country. And so we have the Vedas and the Brahmins and the Upanishads forming kind of the very basic layer of Hinduism. We have the appearance of Sanskrit language, which will evolve into other modern languages that are used in India and in that area. And we also have the Varna system, right, which will evolve into the caste system, and which still has an effect on how Indians live their lives today. And so a lot of these major things that make up modern India really have their roots in this period: the language, the social structure, and the religion. The other important thing that comes out of this period of history, of course, is Buddhism. And Buddhism is one of the world's major religions or spiritual practice, whatever you want to call it. And so I think it's important for us to spend a little time with Buddhism and learn about it as well. Now, I wanted to ask, and if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to, because it's a bit of a personal question. But do we have any Buddhists out there? Do any of you identify as Buddhist? I'm just curious. Because that way I'll know how many mistakes I can make. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm curious. So Sarvish says, okay, cool. Your parents converted, but that's not your thing. Okay, but that's cool. All right. So Sam says yes. Okay, cool. Any other Buddhists out there? I probably should have asked about Hinduism as well, but I kind of imagined that we didn't have any Hindus in our class, but maybe we do. Do we? I should have asked that before. Any Hindus or Buddhists in here besides Sam? No? Okay. All right. Thika. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so we have a couple of Buddhists in here, maybe more. So we'll talk about Buddhism here. You can keep answering if you want. I'll address it if it comes up. We're going to keep talking about Buddhism a little bit, but we're kind of talking about the sort of earlier version of it where it appears in India. And so, of course, Buddhism will spread far and wide. People will practice it slightly differently in different places. And so, as far as I'm aware, there's not sort of one Buddhism tradition. There's actually a lot that are kind of connected to each other. But we'll look at what this video tells us about the origins of Buddhism, and if you don't know anything about it, then you'll learn something. If you are a Buddhist, you probably won't learn anything, but that's okay. Sometimes that happens. So let's dig into this, because again, this is another important thing that comes out of India in this period, in addition to the basics of Hinduism, the Sanskrit language, and the Varna system. We also have the appearance of Buddhism as well. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is to watch a little bit of this video. It's the same series that we've been watching already. And so I posted this in Student Portal. So I want you to watch this section of the video. I want you to watch this section of the video from 7 minutes to 26:23. So about 20 minutes of the video. And I've got a few questions for you. Again, they're listed in Microsoft Teams so that you can have them. And so I'd like you to watch the video. I'd like you to answer the questions. Don't forget to type them out because that's how they will go into the live stream. And then we'll come back here and we'll talk about what we've learned, okay? So I'm going to say 20, maybe we need about 30 minutes for this. Let's come back at 11:40, okay? Let's come back at 11:40 and we'll talk about some of the things that we've learned from this video, okay? So go watch the video. The link is in Microsoft Teams. The questions are in Microsoft Teams, and I'll see you back here at 11:40, okay? Okay, go watch. Okay, good people, and we're back. So we've only got a few minutes left, so let's try and pop these out really quick, okay? So for 2,000 points, not that I'm giving points, but 2,000 points, who's the most influential of Indian thinkers, at least in the opinion of the video anyway? Yeah, Karen says definitely the Buddha, right? So as I think Sarvesh mentions here, his original name is Siddhartha Gautama. He's a prince, he's a noble person in India, realizes that there's a lot of suffering in the world, and yeah. Whoops. Buddha, Buddha, Buddha. Buddha, Buddha, Buddha. Good. Good. And what problem is he trying to solve? What is he looking for? What's he trying to figure out? What's the focus? Yeah, that guy. What's that guy trying to figure out? Still for 2,000 points. What's this guy trying to figure out? Casey says, the nature of the human condition is suffering by human desire. Karen says, enlightenment and how the world works. Cycle of life. Okay. What else? I think we have pieces of it. Yeah, so Karen says he's in search of enlightenment, which he is, although he doesn't quite know what enlightenment is yet. And he does want to understand how the world works. Part of what he comes to believe has to do with the circle of life. And part of it has to do with this suffering, right? And so the human condition is to suffer, and so the Buddha says to himself, yeah, he's looking for enlightenment, and he's looking for an answer to how can we end human suffering? There's so much suffering in the world. How do we end it? And it has something to do with desire. But what does he discover? What is his enlightening idea? What does he figure out? And it does have to do with suffering. It does have to do with suffering. What does he discover? What's the answer to his search? After he sits under that tree and meditates for days and days and days and weeks, what does he come to understand? Well, he does do that, right? He does. The Buddha does a lot of meditation. You're right, Karen, and he does interact with lower classes, right? He does leave his kind of royal palace upbringing and kind of wanders the countryside and interacts with lots of people. Yeah, he does do a lot of meditation. That's true. Not so much. Not so much. He does do a lot of meditation. Let's see. Let's see if we can come up with it. What's his big... It's through meditation that he comes to his answer. Right? It's through meditation that he discovers something about the human condition and about the nature of human suffering. What does he discover, though? He attains peace, but how? Don't say meditation. That's there's something else. There's another part of this equation. There's another part of this equation. Yes, he notices that people, he notices that people die. That's something else. Now you're making things up. Okay. Okay. So he notices that people die and people suffer, right? The Buddha notices that people die and people suffer. And he feels that the nature of the human condition seems to be suffering. And so his question is, how do we end it? Is there any way that humans can escape this constant cycle of suffering, right? And what the Buddha says is, eventually after he does a bunch of meditating and thinking, he says that the root of human suffering is desire, right? He says it's the fact that we want things to be different than they are. That's what makes us unhappy. That's what makes us miserable. We either want things that we can't have, or we want things to stay the same when they never will, or we want things to be a certain way, but of course we can't make them happen that way. And so that's what makes us miserable, our desire for things to be other than what they actually are. And so he says that what you need to do is free yourself from desire. You have to free yourself from wanting what you don't have, or wanting things to be different than what they are, and simply appreciate the way things are without any desire to make them different. And so if it's sunny outside, then you can enjoy the sun. If it's raining outside, then you should enjoy the rain. But when it's raining, if you desire it to be sunny, if you wish it were sunny, that will make you miserable. And so he says it's about appreciation for the way things are, and not attaching yourself to either things being different than they are, or attaching yourself to the idea that you never want things to change, because they always will, right? Does that make sense so far? I'm sure you Buddhists out there knew that already, but for everyone else, does that sound okay? Does that make sense? Does that sound like what they said in the video? Sort of. I guess that's sort of. Okay. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. It'll be okay, Karen. Okay. Yeah, okay. I thought you'd get it, Sam. We'll talk about this a little bit more. We'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. It's kind of an interesting idea, and again, it affects the lives of many, many people, because many people in the world are Buddhists. So we'll continue. It's okay. All right. So we'll continue talking about this tomorrow. We may talk about micropapers tomorrow. We may do it Wednesday. I'm still figuring it out. Ying seems okay. So maybe what I'll do is we'll sign off there for today. I have a couple more questions to ask you on Buddhism and on the video that we just watched, but I'll save them for tomorrow and we'll deal with those. Other than that, I think we're out of Ella's good. Okay, I think we're out of time, so I will sign off there. Yeah, I'll sign off there, and I'll see you all tomorrow. So happy Monday. Hope you have a good day. Yeah, and that's it. See you tomorrow. Bye.